So Kristján, what would you change from the sort of a customer's perspective in order for them to accelerate their adoption of workflow improvements and so on? Is there a pattern that you've spotted amongst all of the customers that have been great at it compared to customers that have been slower at it? Like, what's the difference, and how would you actually advise the slower ones to make changes so that they can accelerate?
Yeah, great question to begin with. I'd actually say that there is a pattern. I think most employers today, like they all want to have AI do more productive things around the workforce. And there's all these reports from all these top-down kind of consultancies saying how AI will change the world. But then, like, you're running a business and you start to think, like, how do I actually do this? And what most businesses have done is that they've taken what I kind of call the first step. They've basically bought access to a chat-based product. They bought something like ChatGPT from OpenAI, like Claude from Anthropic. They maybe playing around with Gemini from Google, and maybe even some of the other models like Grok or whatever is out there. And they've bought access to it. They're allowing their employees to use it. And I actually think that is a great start, because you get a feel for just like, what is AI, how does it work? A lot of the employees often just also have their own personal access. So they're all buying access and using it at home for their personal lives, and even asking things related to their work. But sometimes the employer hasn't allowed them to like put prompt into it. Some are breaking that, some are not. So that's actually where most employers are. They've started that first step. They're trying to play with AI. They're seeing, okay, like this seems to be increasing my productivity. Like whenever I'm doing a task, instead of just going like and doing it, they've started to ask an AI a question or telling the AI, this is what I'm trying to do. This is who I am. This is how I think I'm going to do it. Give me ideas on how I can do it better. Like that's the kind of stuff that almost everyone has started to play with.
Right.
But then you go like, okay, but we're not really seeing this full automated place where everyone's jobs is going away and it's automated agents doing the whole thing. Like, how do we get to that place? What's happening? And I think like until somebody at the workplace has actually like used just chat-based AI enough, they don't really understand what it is. They don't really understand the limitations. They don't really understand that if you put in the wrong prompt, you get the wrong answer. So you can't start with step number 2. It's kind of like going into more advanced math if you don't have the basics. And so that's my kind of like feel that's where most people are. The ones that have gotten further, they have started with step number 1. They have gotten the basics right. And then they've said, okay, now let's use this as part of a core business process that we have. So what they typically do, they don't take on everything at once. They just start to go, okay, like as a business, what are we trying to do? They're trying to build something, they're trying to sell it, they're trying to make their customers happier, they're trying to make their shareholders gain more, whatever it might be. And they start to map up their processes the way they do them today. And then they simply brainstorm in the perfect world where this technology is doing whatever everyone's talking about. Like, how would this process look like? And they take smart people, their own employees, their customers, people who are smart in other areas. They get them involved, and they ask them, like, what are your thoughts? And they put it together. They even have the AI help with that. And then they see the process of where they need to be. And then they go, okay, what do we actually need for that? What are the data inputs that we need? What are the things? And they take one process at a time, they build it up, and they actually see the value from it. And the interesting part is that if you do this, you actually end up saying, okay, how much time and effort did we actually spend on just, getting this one process right? How much did it cost before in terms of like time spent, employees' time spent, all those things? How much does it cost now? And you can just see those benefits. It's like the easiest spreadsheet formula of cost savings you can think of. And that's usually not taking into account like all the people who are getting a better experience, because a lot of times, organizations, they do something, but it's not really giving you like the benefits. It might be easier for the organization, but it's like causing all this pain across all the stakeholders.
Oh, I totally get it.
And this is something you can really map up. And once you get one process right and you can see the benefits, you just go, okay, let's do the next one. And the next one will take so much shorter to do than the first one, because the first one is like really when you get the things right. And that's how you do it bottom up. The organizations that do it this way, it doesn't matter what tools they use or providers or vendors, those are the winners today. It's not the ones that just go, let's spend 10% of our costs on AI, and then like, what do you mean? Like, you have to do it bottoms up or you fail.
Yeah, really good question and answer there, Kristján. I want to just double down a little bit on this. So I think maybe the misconception with AI is that you just switch it on and suddenly you've got this sentient thing talking to you and it takes care of everything.
Yeah.
That's not where we're at. What you're talking about is that you've actually got to go do some classic business process reengineering. Yeah. The difference is now is that we actually have AI enablement on that re-engineered process, whereas previously it would have just been more humans doing it or less humans doing it. Yep. Now we've got humans plus technology that could supplement or even augment or even replace some of parts of that process.
100%, 100%. And it's kind of like when people are like, what does that mean for those who are kind of thinking like, what is he like referring to? I think there's like one example that I really like was like before when you had like business process automation and all these RPA tools and what was out there. You'd literally like have to explain to the service you're using like in so much detail, finite detail about how it would work. So it's kind of like if you go on a Google map, you've said it, I'm going from A to B and this is the path I take. And it would work as long as nothing happened. But if there's a roadblock or like here in the Netherlands, like the trains are closing, like there's a protest happening tomorrow, it would not be able to continue, it would just be stuck. While an AI agent is going to go, wait, this way is shorter today. Like there's a roadblock, let's do something else. Let's take the bike instead. Or even let's reschedule this meeting and do it another day. Like it will actually have so much more sophistication. So it's much easier, like to map these things up with this new technology than it's ever been.
Yeah, and I think the fact that, the agents have are connected to more data sets, they're connected to real-time stuff that human beings might not be able to do. They can introduce information and context that the process that was only human probably would struggle to achieve. So I think that the path is clear, but I think I understand better why some organizations struggle to do it, because you do need to stop, you need to document, and you need to re-engineer.
But I mean, I would also like to ask you. I mean, you've been in this field of TA recruitment in the HR space. You've met with thousands of people, literally. I've been reading your newsletter for years with all these insights. And I mean, there must be some pattern on your end, like you're meeting, and I guess with all these different types of stakeholders, like ranging from the companies who are trying to build stuff, to the people who are using these things, to the if you talk about applicants, people who are trying to look for jobs, like recruiters, all these different categories. Like if you think about like where we are today, 2025, and we're going to be looking at this like 5 years from now, like is there anything like that you believe will be different 5 years from now, like what has actually changed, so that if you go into an organization or you talk with a recruiter, like what has actually changed in that period, and why has it changed? What's actually happened for us to get there?
Yeah, I would say the transformation within 5 years is likely to be pretty profound. Just observing the speed of innovation that's happened over the last 3 years, I think it is pretty shocking. And that speed seems the velocity isn't slowing down, so it's kind of self-reinforcing. I think we're going to have a different understanding as to the relationship between what is workforce. So we're going to get to a point where instead of thinking the only people you need to care about as an organization are the folks on your payroll, we're going to have a much more expanded concept as to the individuals that interface with the business. And they could be any number of diverse sort of economic relationships you have with those folks. Your ability to coordinate, cross-fertilize, your ability to organize that sort of separate group, disparate group of resources, that's going to be a very key and important part of how a business organizes. So I guess another way to think about this is that the clean separation between where a company starts and stops and the market begins, I think that barrier starts really becoming permeable. We're going to get a lot of oscillation. A lot of people kind of on one side they're going to be a supplier, and then suddenly they're going to be a quasi-employee type. We don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter, but they're still supplying value and services to us, and we want to make use of that. So that's obviously got huge implications in terms of our function of talent acquisition, because talent acquisition previously was all focused on payroll. We were only focused on hiring people that would eventually appear on payroll. What does our function look like if, in fact, the organization prefers to have a much more diverse set of resources that they want to interact with that may not be permanently hired? In which case, I would hope that our function expands scope to be able to supply the right business enablement to the requirement, irrespective of the conditions of the employment contract, or even whether it's a human being at all. Like, we can sort of anticipate a near future whereby the obvious solution to a resource problem is actually, you know, a 20 agent team that is specialized in this function. Let's deploy that rather than hiring 2 or 3 humans to do it. Why should a reformed or reimagined TA function not be that TA enablement, or should we say that business enablement function? So lots of things will transform. I think our name will change. It probably has to. I think recruitment will always be a component. There's a reason why we want to kind of get core resources together, human beings in a room. I think that's still very powerful. Probably in the end, maybe it's one of the remaining differentiators of a business.
Yeah.
When everyone is AI enabled, what is the difference? Probably who the core folks are in the room. That's still going to be very powerful. So I think recruitment continues for those people. But then I think we'll have a lot more of a diverse way to interact with different types of people. Yeah. And that should mean broadened skill set for our function.
I think it's a really interesting point that you make there. I think it's like, if I double down a little bit on this one, it's like, it's also like technologies yet you don't really knew like that something was even possible. Like, once you kind of opened up that field, like there was this application I tried the other day, which is called Bordy. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's just one of those startups, but it's like, it worked in a really interesting way. It basically told me like, hey, you should, can I give you a phone call? And I said, okay. And then some AI thing calls me. And I share them like who I am and who I would like to meet with and talk with and what my kind of challenges are, whatever it is. And it says, okay, great. Now I'm going to, whenever somebody asks it does the same thing. But what this AI agent does is that it's going to then introduce me. It's going to introduce me to people that it thinks it's relevant. So all of a sudden you have this, crazy connector that does all these things. And so my question to you is kind of like, have you, because I didn't realize that this would exist. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't kind of just figure out that this would be an interesting thing that would come, and maybe this would play a role in recruitment or in other places. I'm trying to figure out, have you seen anything which is sort of on that border? Like, it's kind of crazy if you think about it. Like, it's just like, it's not like a typical, like, is there anything like crazy that you've seen out there that might maybe eventually become something, maybe it's even started, like just like some of those things that people are trying?
I think we've seen so much experiment. I love the idea of doing like a matching service of this type, because that discovery remains very, very difficult. So many things go into the relevancy of that match. Yeah. I think part of the problem that body is trying to solve is trying to identify what the user it tries to guess or infer what the user wants without you necessarily having to explicitly state it. Yeah. And actually this is, I hate the comparison dating to recruiting, because obviously they're quite different sort of functions and purposes, but there's one core flaw between both of our activities in dating and recruiting, is that do we actually know what we want? Yeah. And oftentimes we don't. Because we can spec it out, we can specify this is exactly what I want for this, and in fact it isn't the case, because our knowledge is incomplete, and in fact it's only when we interact with a bunch of other people that we realize, oh my goodness, of course it's this type of person, and it isn't actually connected to, or at least it's tangentially connected to our original specification. Yeah. Now I personally think that AI is going to struggle to capture that, because a great deal of it is interacting with the universe. The human being, the decision maker, needs to actively interact with the universe in order to build the understanding as to what they actually want. And I don't think you could outsource that, because you're the actor. So there's a kind of a collaborative way for you to gain the information, and that's you pushing against the universe and having the universe push back at you, and then from there you get educated. So I like the idea of Bordy. I like the fact it's trying to infer. If it doesn't collect your requirement, I'd be even more impressed, because sometimes you need the randomization. That gives the spark, that gives the creativity. Exactly, yeah. That's where you kind of fall for somebody, because you're not speccing it out, right? I don't know anybody's like married their partner by literally speccing it out and going on a search. I mean, has that happened? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know. I dated before dating apps, so it was sort of like, I've never really had that experience. But but like from an engineering standpoint, it certainly is interesting to think like, is it just data points? Is it just information that you kind of go, well, you know, the CV and the cover letter and the questions you ask people and academic records is something, and then you meet someone, and there's always behavioral things and cultural things, and all these, you know, parameters.
There's a quantum element to human interaction.
Yeah.
Right, meaning it's very hard to actually lock down. It's like the interaction, the free zone between two people actually creates the new information that is never recorded. Yeah. And I think part of the reason why human beings, at the end of the day, I'm an AI, an optimist when it comes down to it, is because most of some of the more critical sort of decisions we make are actually never documented. They're never fed into a training set. They're kind of things that we just get in a way that is non-technological. And I believe that that's going to give us, if we kind of have a more systematized vision of doing that, then I think that's also going to be a competitive advantage in an AI-enabled world. Because if we get to a point where, let's say there's AI enablement becomes ubiquitous, 50 skills become the dominant platform, everyone's 50 skilled up, that's brilliant. You're going to all level up, and you're all going to get better. But what is the differentiator? I would guess it's going to be the human beings that have the quantum, you know, there's a quality there that defies documentation that will create sort of the difference between a success or failure and whatever project they're on.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And I think it's also like, I think with like every single type of technology that we've had as human beings, it's basically been adopted because it has benefits. It is increasing experience. It's saving us time. You know, we literally had oars when we were, you know, doing the boats back in our time, and now we have motors, and nobody's going to go, let's go back to the, you know. There's been politicians promising like more jobs by forcing people to not being allowed to, you know, put their own fuel on their car. Like there's, you know, it's sort of a pointless, you know, added step. But with that regard, I'm trying to like, so I wouldn't be surprised if we'll see a lot of jobs change. Similar to like, you know, we had elevator operators back in the day. We had people, we called someone, we had people kind of switching the thing. I think there's going to be tasks that can be automated. I also think there's going to be tasks that can be automated, but legally or policy-wise, somebody will say, even though you can, and even though this would be very beneficial, we're not going to do it. And you've been around all these dialogues. Is there anything in your mind that you like is kind of an absolute no, maybe, like with a human in the loop or something, and like absolutely yes? If you kind of go over the categories of what people are talking about, maybe not what is today, but like what you think it should be moving years ahead, like with all this dialogue moving forward with what comes up with it.
The way I'm beginning to think about this is that there's certain jobs. Let's look at it, jobs as the unit of analysis. The key to kind of defensibility of the job, in my opinion, is how what the degree of collaboration intensity is. So in other words, if you've got a job that's low collaboration intensity, meaning you're interacting with human beings quite low, one person can go ahead and do that job. Maybe you don't need to speak to that many people to get your job done. It's actually the remote dream, by the way. Those jobs are probably quite exposed to automation, because whatever output you're outputting, you don't need, there's no complexity to it in the sense, no other human beings adding the complexity. Now, the jobs where you have high collaboration intensity, I think are quite defensible because maybe the intensity is the point. So the output isn't the point, it's actually the interaction that's the point. And we kind of sometimes confuse that. Give you an example. Probably the canonical example of the most defensible job is probably healthcare nursing. Right, we think that a doctor probably will be disintermediated because actually the diagnostic capability of AI is superior to a doctor. We know that's true. However, do we need the nurse to kind of walk the wards and just have that intuition to know actually, I think the patient in bed number B probably needs a checkup. Something tells that nurse that, because that nurse has walked that ward 100,000 times and has that intuition, something about the body language is not right. There's some undefined sort of reason why this person needs an additional
information
check.
missing, basically.
Correct.
Like that,
and the intuition, I think, is something we've dismissed. Sadly enough, we've denigrated in HR because we think that's bias. But we kind of need to rehabilitate bias. So my controversial take is we need to rehabilitate bias because bias is actually a form of information processing that is just simply gone through the subconscious information processing. Now, yes, injustice can occur as a result of biased decision making, but actually injustice can occur due to logical processing also. So it's not one is better than the other. We have to respect intuition. We have to understand why intuition sometimes can give us another kind of a counterpoint when we have AI determining the numbers, right? You need to have a person saying, I'm not sure that's correct, let's have a closer look. So yeah, there's a really famous interview clip, and this is even pre-AI, I don't know if you saw it, but Jeff Bezos was doing an interview, and he said, look, when the anecdote and the data clash, trust the anecdote, because maybe you're measuring it wrong. And he told the story of he was in a board meeting, and he told the story of one of his heads of customer service presenting some amazing stat about, hey, we resolve our customer service problems in 60 seconds, no problem, it's done. He's presenting this to Jeff Bezos. Bezos says, that doesn't feel right, right? It doesn't feel right. The numbers, maybe the measurement's wrong. And he actually calls the number in the board meeting, and it rings for 10 minutes. Whilst this guy's having to sit there, having told Jeff Bezos, it was 10 minutes. And he tells a story, not to hammer this fellow, I'd love to know what happened to him, but he tells a story there to demonstrate that actually the feeling wasn't right. It was clearly, you call a number, you have a bad experience. Usually, it's not 60-second resolution. The measurement was wrong. So you go back to the measurement and check it. Now, I think that's basically what intuition can help us do as you go forward. So in answer to your question, defensibility of jobs, have a look at where the job has multiple interfaces with human beings, and probably we should do more of that. If you want to shape your career, think about where you're doing the interfaces with humans, do more of that. Where you can operate independently, probably heavily apply automation to all of those things, because if you don't, someone else will, and your job will shrink. And this is,
I love this example that you made, because there was literally like an interview I think I read the other day with the CEO of Anthropic, who was making Claude, where he literally said, like, one of the big challenges that's happening right now is that even with all this AI capability we have today, we still haven't been able to come to a point with intuition and creativity of the AI doing something, because it's based on this huge amount of text that it's trained on, that we still haven't been able to crack that code. So it's not gonna, like, for example, if you're running a business or if you're doing something, it's like, is it gonna come out of nowhere that the agent goes, now we have to build a new iPhone or product or this? Like, does it come up with that because of a predefined process, or is there something intuitive that brings it there? So like, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned this in the HR space, because like you said, like it's been a lot of processes built which are basically all involved about removing all types of bias and having the process make sure it's there. And now maybe we need to think about, where in this process do we want to re-implement the intuition part that we have?
Absolutely.
Especially if that's the only thing that's left of us humans kind of doing in this, if you look at the 5, 10, 15-year time span.
Well, his pathway towards rehabilitating bias, right? We could argue that an attempt to eliminate bias is fundamentally a dehumanizing effort. You're trying to literally remove the humanity from the process. So if you look at a lot of techniques that do debiasing, it's about anonymization, it's about removal identity, it's about trying to, even on the voice side, they say we're going to anonymize the voice, so you can't tell a gender. I think, okay, what you're trying to do objectively is to say you're trying to create a just system, right? Justice, that seems to be something I'm aligned to. We're all keen on justice. But do we sacrifice humanity to achieve justice? Because it seems to me by literally removing humans and turning them into numbers, isn't that dehumanizing? So I think the way in which we might be able to re-argue for rehabilitation of the intuition is to say we have to rehumanize the experience, and we have to recognize that human beings need to interact together, and we might be making intuitive choices that way. It's not an objective like screening process. Again, dating is the wrong example, but how much of that is intuition? How much of that is, I like the vibe of this person? Again, I go back to the spec. It's like, you're not making like objective decisions as to who you marry or who you date or whatever. You're not, certainly justice doesn't necessarily appear in your mind when you do that. It's like my vibe is there. So I just think, okay, there's a new normal way in which human beings create relationships. Somehow we've got to bring that back in, but also make sure, we don't go back to the other way, where it's just purely nepotism and purely discriminatory stuff, and all those types of things which are negative. And we need to kind of police and ensure that people get fair treatment. But we also have to recognize that actually human beings in collaboratively intense jobs actually need to operate together. And oftentimes that's not like an objective measure.
One kind of a side spin here, but I think this is something that I've also thought about, because I get this question a lot, and I wanted to ask you, like, if you were working in the profession as an HR professional or TA right now, what would you start to do in your, like, you've been doing your job for all these years, you're reading all these news, there's all these changes, like, how would you do things differently than maybe the years before?
Well, I mean, what I would do now would be a couple of things. I mean, firstly, I would shift my mindset.
Yeah.
So there is like and I'm kind of guilty of contributing to it to a certain degree, because I think it's just broadly a true thing that the transformation that we're going to see is going to be tremendous. And HR, by the way, kind of is impacted on two levels with this. Because number one, it's impacted directly as a function, because a lot of the processes that we're doing will be automated, will be enhanced and augmented, etc. But also the impact will happen at the level of the organization itself. And HR, of course, supports the organization. So there's two levels where this impacts us. So we're doubly impacted. The first thing I would say is, look, you've got to change your mindset, because if you sit in a place of anxiety and it's a place of fear, it just stops you from action. You can wallow in it a little bit, and you just spin around in it a little bit. That's no bueno. I think we have to just be intellectually interested in what's going on. The world is changing in this spectacular way. Let's embrace that and think, okay, I need to take forward action. I need to take forward action in this as the change occurs, because that's where opportunity might be. Mindset shift. Second thing I would do is obviously AI self-enable. So just don't wait for Microsoft to roll AI into you or whatever. That's going to happen, but don't think that's an efficiency not to put work in now. So you want to be optimally AI literate when those big moments happen, so that you're able to make better decisions, and you're able to always be at the top 5-10% of your peer group, because you've already self-trained in how to prompt, how to debias, how to use tools, how to spin up apps, and all the rest of it. That's AI self-enablement. Thirdly, tapping back on this idea that there are other forms of intelligence that we could use to supplement or even counteract artificial intelligence. I think you need to build your network value, meaning connect with as many human beings as possible in order to get access to collective intelligence, community intelligence. Similar to events that we're doing together here. A part of the reason is get people in a room, create these peer group relationships. They all leave this experience having much stronger relationships, having met each other in person. Their ability to access collective intelligence will all shoot up. Yeah. So make sure you do all of that, so that you can tap into the network to get that intelligence. That's going to be a competitive advantage. And finally, you've got to kind of contribute to the discourse. So there's an element where there's a lot. I had a coffee with a friend of mine this morning, and he is a fantastic lurker, right?
Yeah.
Super intelligent. Just absorbs all the information, very good in judgments, actually quite harsh with judgments, very good with them in terms of accuracy, but never says anything publicly, right? Even though there's clearly lots to say. And I think I said to that person, hey, listen, you got to say it. It doesn't matter whether it's a full solution or not. It doesn't matter whether you're solving any problems or not. Just contribute to the public discourse. A couple of reasons why. Number one, by kind of contributing something to the universe, you actually create more information back. So it's almost like an echo, right? If you're trying to find your way in the blind, you would need to create a sound in order to get an echo back to see what's going on. It's no different from speaking publicly. So go and post something, get your thoughts out, share them out. Someone might get something from it, but mostly you might get something from it, because other people might challenge you, corroborate you, whatever it might be. But that free song will be potentially valuable for you. So number one, you contribute to it. Secondly, don't forget that every single thing that is posted digitally or created digitally is going to go up in the training data at some point. And so there is some sort of intuition, from my side, that does it make sense that we should contribute to that training data in some way, or do we just step back and let a couple of really loud foghorns take over the chat? I don't know which way is better, but I would always think that a polyphonic universe is better than a monophonic one, meaning we need lots of voices, lots of perspectives. We see already in today's media landscape how easy it is to silence certain voices and to amplify other voices. Based on political values, based on whatever it might be. And I'm thinking, okay, if that's the future we're looking at, we probably want to try and create a universe where as many people have as much ability to say with equal voice, so contribute to the public discourse.
I love that reply. And I so much agree with you on that training data part. But I think most people don't realize the AIs, the reason why AI started to work, really started to work, it's because they started to give it way more access to information than ever before. And the more it grew, the better it got. And now it's gotten to a point where it's basically reading everything on the public internet and even creating then new data from what's happening on the socials, what's happening on things that it has access to. And that literally is the part that makes it better. So I think that notion is just the way to go. The maybe other part that I just wanted to follow up with on this one is that it's still how do you know that what someone is saying is something, how do you know that what someone is saying is actually them saying it, but not like an AI agent powering something with some agenda of some sort? And is that going to drown the voices of people who actually mean it? Do you think we need to get to a place where we need to validate people's credentials or something so that you can actually say, hey, this is actually them doing it? Do you see, it's maybe a little bit off the HRTA part, but it's still like there's already robots applying for jobs on behalf of people. I think validation is sort of becoming way more important than ever before. But what are your kind of thoughts on this part?
Yeah, so number one, from an employer side, there's no question that validation of a human being is going to be a very, very top priority. I mean, previously it was an afterthought, it was an administrative function. Yeah. Of course, we'll do a reference check, etc., because the presumption was, of course, that's a human being, yeah. And of course, that human being has been accurately represented on the CV, right? So we thought that was true. Actually, what AI does, in a really unexpected way, is that it destroys the trust in any digital communication. And so AI has a potential to corrupt all of our digital experiences such that we go all the way back to analog. Now, I'm old enough to remember when, as a recruiter, I used to walk candidates on site. Yeah. You literally would walk them on site, right? That was part of the service, because that's a human validation. Literally, there's no body swapping going on. This is the person I'm putting into the business. So I think that type of analog recruiting behavior, anachronistic though it sounds now, is that's going to come back in, because from a AI fakery point of view, it's going to become increasingly difficult to distinguish between what is real or not. So our universe is called an epistemic crisis. We literally can't tell on digital information what is true or not. Yeah. Massive withdrawal of trust, and then we'll end up trusting only the things that are analog. Yeah. So okay, you can see the business potential there. I think there's a lot of recruitment work will kind of paradoxically re-emerge. Because the ability or the requirement to human validation is going to be a big tick in the box. I think recruitment agencies have an opportunity. If they can say, hey, listen, here are our body of candidates. We have actually manually verified each of these. They've come into our office and we've shook their hand. That's going to be a premium service if you can deliver those candidates. So I think in a weird way, AI will bring us back to analog. We're going to see some real inefficiencies again. But it will be a premium kind of service. Now, from a human, as a human interactor on the digital universe, this is a very interesting set of challenges. So, the way in which I saw the timeline was that the future would look like two types of sci-fi scenarios, right? It would either be an Avatar-style, Pandora-style sort of universe of abundance, where you have free fruit everywhere, wonderful animals flying around, carnivores and herbivores sitting down together. It's like literally Garden of Eden. So that was one vision of the universe. But the other vision of the future is like the Mad Max world. Yeah. Where it's just a desolation, and it's actually terrifying to be outside in the desert. The only place is safe for these walled cities. And the walled cities, I think, are going to be places that human beings will erect, because inside the walled cities, there's guaranteed human. outside the walled cities, there's going to be nightmares because they're going to be basically AI avatars, they're going to be AI clones, they're going to be deep fakes of people that are in your past that are re-emerge and all this type of stuff. It will be a horror show, and you're going to not want to spend time there. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to retreat into these protected zones. By the way, whoever creates a walled city, whether that's an employer, whether it's a community or whatever, will be in a significantly powerful position, so long as they police it and keep it safe. Within that, there'll be human-to-human dialogue with the assurance that everyone's a human being. So I think that's basically all kinds of implications on sourcing, employer branding, authenticity, etc., all falls back into our work in recruiting and HR.
I think this was great, Hung. I just wanted to thank you so much for doing this interview together here, and hope you have a great time for the rest of the day at this event that we're hosting together.
Great.
Thank you so much.
No, my pleasure, man. Really good chatting with you.
Great chatting as well.